What the hell was... Oh. I guess I'm dead, huh? Yep, can't feel my arm. Feels super cold.
Request confirmed. Acquisition of the skill heat resistance
That's
is
probably the
successful.
blood draining out of my torso. Oh, yeah, my arms are starting to go too now.
Request confirmed.
I did not know getting cut in half would hurt that bad.
Resistance is successful. Continuing. Physical attack resistance. Acquisition
Guess I'll call him the king of curses for nothing, huh? I couldn't even make him go all out against me.
Acquisition of unique skill.
Such a waste.
Successful.
He's gonna be pretty bored. Oh well, you genius have got this. If only there was someone better to guide them.
Extra skill acquired.
Someone better than me, at least.
Continuing.
Isn't that right?
Sage will transform
Suguru.
into the unique skill. Great Sage. Successful.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me, T1Dubs, that one weeb, whatever the hell you want to call me, if you even remember my name. Because I've been gone for several months, so we're back with an absolute banger of an idea. That being, what if Satoru Gojo was reincarnated as a slime? For those of you who haven't seen Tensura, or That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, in the original story, a man whose name is known as Satoru Mikamis from Japan would die in a stabbing incident and transfer to the other world, where his soul would reincarnate into the body of a slime. However, this time a different Satoru would have taken his place. Satoru Gojo. We're going to be getting into some spoilers from the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, so if you're an anime-only fan, I recommend you don't watch this video, but I figure if you're on the internet, you've probably seen it, so be warned. Anyway, after Gojo the Honored One took on the fraud Sukuna, using the Ten Shadows technique, used Maharaga to create a world-cutting slash that ended up ending Gojo's life. And this is where our story takes place today, beginning with Satoru Gojo as his mind transfers out of the world of Jujutsu Kaisen and into that of the world of Tensura. When Gojo opened his eyes, or what he felt were his eyes, he would see a world of nothingness. It would be as if though his entire perception had changed. He thought, am I dead? Is this the end? But nothing would come. Just a soft, bubbling silence with the occasional drip of water. Something he felt was water on his head. Gojo would try and move his fingers, his hands, his arms, his legs, anything, but nothing worked. He couldn't feel, he couldn't speak, his voice was silent. However, he still felt the pull of cursed energy, the pool that he had held within his lifetime and grown over his years as a student, facing off against the likes of Toji Fushiguro and Ryumen Sukuna, into his life now, where Gojo would begin to realize he could in fact move. As he moves, he would bump into something, slowly sitting on top of it as he feels information flood into his brain, wondering, what is this? What is this feeling? That is of Gojo absorbing a plant and realizing that he could never absorb plants. This creating the start of his journey, where he realizes that his form has changed from that of his smexy human form into that of a gelatinous figure, being a blue slime. So how would Gojo adapt to this new life? I think first off, he'd be pretty disappointed not to have gone to the promised place to meet Suguru, but honestly, I don't think he would do anything rash like try to end his slimy existence, especially when he figures out that he can continue to use cursed energy while in this form. Something talked about in Jujutsu Kaisen is the difference between the body and the soul, in that the soul and the body are one. This is interpreted differently based on techniques, such as with Mahito and Kanjaku. In Mahito's case, when he affects the soul, the body changes to match it, implying that the soul comes first and it alters the body. While with Kanjaku, who takes over bodies, he's able to absorb their techniques and their memories while just shoving his brain in them using his own cursed technique, which implies that the body contains everything regardless of having a soul. So, this is kind of a contradictory point in the series. But for the sake of this video, we're going to argue that Mahito is correct and that the soul comes before the body, which means that Gojo should still have access to his techniques and his abilities from when he was alive as a human, now carried over into this slimy form. Gojo would continue wandering around the cave, wandering and eating certain things before he eventually discovers his new skills, those that he had been blessed by the system when he had switched over to this new world. The, of course, skill that I'm mentioning being that of Sage, or Great Sage. The skill would tell Gojo about the things he's eating, saying whenever he's eaten Magisteel, or any type of ore, which would apply to all of the items within the cave until he eventually runs into his first monster. Interestingly, I don't think Gojo would have to use the water blade or create the water blade technique here when Rimuru had to eat the water, because Gojo should be able to propel himself through the air using infinity, even if he is in this form. So he should be able to float or fly using infinity, just like he did when he was a human. So Gojo would be using blue and red to kill monsters, with him absorbing them using the same skill. This is when he discovers the ability to absorb and gain new skills, like the thread feathers and poison fang from the spider and the black snake within the cave, eventually discovering the ability to sense heat, magic, and other abilities from all of the monsters that Rimuru would have encountered in the original timeline. Since he's still technically blind, he's basically moving off of instinct and feeling at this point. Since Gojo Satoru is actually an experienced combatant, he would be able to sense some of the disdain and bloodlust from these monsters, which is how he's been able to fight and move around pretty well, but it's not going to carry him enough to escape the cave. This would be which is what pushes him towards meeting Veldora, with the magicules in the air getting so much thicker, which would actually disrupt his sense of cursed energy. When Gojo meets Veldora, they would have a similar conversation to the original slime, with Gojo instead having a few more pop culture references, just because of Gojo being Gojo, and also promising not to be terrified of Veldora, saying there's no way he could be scarier than anything he's seen before, thinking of the disgusting curses he's fought in his life. Anyway, Veldora would bless him with the ability teaching him to use magicule sensing, which lets him see using magicules. This is when Gojo would discover how magicules and cursed energy actually work, with magicules being the raw molecules of energy in this world. So cursed energy, for example, would be as if though filtering magicules. Think of it like taking the power of a lightning bolt through a lightning rod and transferring it into electricity. In this much of the same way, cursed energy is a filter of which basically he can use magicules and convert it into cursed energy. So if we're using math here, one magicule would equal about 2 cursed energy. So all of his magicules and magic power can be converted to double the amount of cursed energy. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, after he can see, he would in fact freak out a little, saying, "Holy crap, this guy's a dragon." His next question would be wondering how strong he is. But considering the promise he made with Veldora to be his friend, this seemed a little unfair. The two of them would talk for a while, with Gojo hurriedly trying to get out of there, getting bored with the conversation, before Veldora would offer him another deal, saying that in honor of their friendship he would give him a name, with him supposedly giving him the same. Essentially trading names in honor of their friendship. This is when Satoru would have the wonderful idea of bringing Veldora under his clan, turning Veldora into Veldora Gojo, officially making the Storm Dragon a part of the Gojo clan, with him being given the name of Rimuru, his new name being Rimuru Gojo. After this, Gojo would then devour Veldora, absorbing him entirely into his stomach and promising to help him break it, with him using the analysis skills of his currently unformed Six Eyes, which Great Sage would be able to make use of when analyzing unlimited imprisonment, the ultimate skill that had been used to imprison the Storm Dragon many years ago. With Great Sage using Six Eyes, the speed of which this barrier is going to be broken down will be broken much faster. So Great Sage would already be running with higher speed and processing just because of Gojo having the Six Eyes. Anyway, Gojo would leave the cave with him now being able to see, taking full advantage of the adventurer's thumbs to open the door to the dungeon, allowing Gojo to escape into the world as a free slime. Gojo, upon leaving the dungeon where Veldora had been kept, and now entering into the Great Forest of Jura, would eventually come across the same group of goblins that Rimuru had in the original. This time, Rimuru Gojo would be a little bit less naive in wondering how the goblins had sensed him, since he has some knowledge on cursed energy and sensory types, wondering if there's, similar to his magicule sense he learned from Veldora, another way to sense him. This would be the magicules coming off of his body which he has not learned to control yet. He would talk to Great Sage, asking if there's any way to limit the amount of magicules he's spilling out, which would eventually mean he can consume the excess magicule count from Veldora and consume it into his stomach, hiding it and subsequently not terrifying the goblins who had approached him for assistance. I think Gojo probably would have helped in the direwolf case, with him helping the goblins take down their leader, if nothing else just to test his abilities, and since he has no home base or connections in this world, to give him somewhere to at least start with wondering what he's going to do with his new life. I think this Gojo would really embrace the second chance ideology of isekai, especially when considering that his entire life he had been used as a human weapon by the Jutsu Society. So when he versus the direwolf chieftain and takes him out using a aka, just holding up his slime hand and blasting the head off his shoulders, the rest of the direwolves then bowing to him after he had defeated their leader, Gojo would definitely try to improve the living conditions, with him being a fan of Japanese cuisine, specifically sweets. So I could see him wanting to further enhance the society he's living in so he can continue to enjoy the luxuries from his past life. While the adventuring team sent from the Kingdom of Blumen would continue to investigate the dungeon, discovering that the Storm Dragon was indeed missing, this information would make it back to the Kingdom of Blumen and Fuse, the Adventurer Guild head. It's around this same point that Gojo would discover that he could name monsters when he was trying to talk to them, and realize that they didn't have names of their own. Gojo would similarly discover the ability to name them, thus granting them power, similar to the energy he had felt enter him when Veldora had named him with the name Rimuru. Anyway, I'm not quite sure what names that Gojo would come up with for the new goblins and the direwolves in this timeline, but for the sake of things, let's just say they stay the same for the characters. But I do imagine he would name some of them after his old comrades, so I'm sure there's a Gob-Yuji or something out there. Who knows? Anyway, he would take Gobta and the others to Dwargon, the city that was known by the chief Rigurd, named after his son who had passed and his younger brother who had survived. Anyway, regardless, Gojo makes it to the city of Dwargon, the Dwarvish city, where he would get to similar shenanigans. At one point, when one of the goblins had been injured on the road, Gojo would wonder if there was any way he could apply his reverse curse technique to him to save him, when Great Sage would offer a suggestion, that of turning the absorbed plants from the cave where Veldora's magic heals had been soaking into everything into a high potion. A potion made with the same cells to fully regenerate the goblin. Gojo would be impressed by this, wondering if it's even more effective because of the higher energy rate of magicules, discovering the high potion and also revealing that it's stronger than his reverse curse technique would be. Although, while Gojo can passively use his RCT, not everyone can, so this is actually a more efficient way, and it's way better at healing others than RCT was in his original world, so this is something he would keep in mind. In his head though, Gojo would think about how if he used a high potion combined with his RCT, he could probably even heal his brain faster than he had originally when he was going domain to domain with Sukuna, thinking of using the potion and RCT at the same time to recover the cells in his brain that were burning up from his combined use of RCT and his domain expansion of Limitless. One major difference here is that when Gojo becomes friends with the dwarf Kaiji and his other brothers from the shop, who were making the swords for the army, and he figures out he can replicate them as well, and they go out to the elvish bar drinking and Vesta comes in trying to spoil the parade, Gojo would not be as flustered by the girls using him as a headrest. Just considering the amount of riz he had in his original life, he's pretty used to the attention, so honestly, it would be expected for him. Hell, even being called a monster he was pretty used to, even from his comrades, due to how powerful he was compared to everyone else. So if anything, it's more like the form matched the man now. I definitely believe that after seeing Dwargon, Gojo would be more motivated to create his own society, similar to his desire from his original life as Satoru Gojo, where he wanted to turn Jujutsu Society into a place for sorcerers to bloom. I feel like it makes sense that he would want to pass on his Jujutsu, and so during the small gap of time after his return from Dwargon, once he had attained Kaiji and the others to help with construction and beginning construction in the village, I do believe he'll begin teaching those in the village, the goblins and the wolves, how to use cursed energy, explaining the use of negative emotions and the conversion of magicules into cursed energy. Gobta, much like in the original, would have been a quick learner, having discovered how to leap into his own shadow to escape the prison in Dwargon, and as such, I think he would actually be the first person to awaken and unlock the feeling of cursed energy with Gojo's teachings. Seeing Gobta actually have a talent for summoning his direwolf into his shadow, this would remind Gojo of his time with Megami. Well, when Megami was still Megami, and how he could use the 10 Shadows technique. He would think of an idea for Gobta, explaining the idea of how the 10 shadows fundamentally worked, telling Gobta to slay monsters, and using his newly awakened cursed energy, Gojo would actually help teach Gobta the 10 shadows technique, or at least the fundamentals of it, believing that with magic heals in this world, and how he's been able to obtain skills just from his desires, he believes it's possible to recreate the cursed techniques he's familiar with, if you have a strong enough will, that is. But enough of that, that's just a little subplot for now. Anyway, Gojo would be continuously enjoying his life now as the chillaxed Slimy King. That is, until the adventurers from Bloomid return, along with them their traveling partner, who would, as we know, be Shizu, the bearer of Ifrit and also a summoned Otherworlder, the other and most common type of Otherworlders in this world. Gojo would have learned from Veldora that he was not the only person from Japan or from his world to be summoned here, saying that it was strange that someone could be reincarnated though, most people arriving with their bodies intact. So Gojo's arrival here is pretty uncommon. Anyway, Gojo doesn't know about Shizu being it from Japan yet. This is where the first major fight in the series takes place, that being Ifrit versus Gojo. When Shizu loses control over the seal and her mask fractures, causing Ifrit to be released from within her soul, the demon that had been placed, a spirit within her, by the demon lord Leon Cromwell, Gojo would be forced to face it. The other adventurers and the goblins would watch in horror as Gojo faces off against this legendary demon. Ifrit would throw flames towards Gojo, who would just stand there tanking it. It wouldn't even matter that he has the temperature resistance skill for both cold and heat, because he doesn't even need it. With just his infinity, he could block the flames easily. Ifrit would be horrified as Gojo would just simply keep hopping towards him in his slime form, with the flames not even touching him. Ifrit would freak out, flying and throwing flames and fireballs all around the village. This is when Gojo would get a little more serious, using his teleportation technique as he teleports, then using blue. Using blue, he would suck all the fireballs into one continuous space before consuming them using his predator skill. Using this, he'd absorb the fire, analyzing it, and learning how to create and use fire magic himself. This is when he would continue to attack Ifrit using his own technique of red, blasting Ifrit's flames apart and destroying him with his cursed energy. Gojo would point his slimy hand up, saying, "Red," with a ball of red light forming and ripping through Ifrit's stomach, thus ending Ifrit, and Shizu returning to her original form. Gojo, knowing how he can increase his power by consuming things, would have devoured Ifrit, which would again result in Shizu beginning to rapidly age and her health to deteriorate. Gojo would spend the last moments with Shizu talking about life in Japan, Gojo not explaining the history of cursed spirits or the life he had lived, just simply listening and talking about the pop culture and the way Japan had developed after the war in the era which Shizu had been sent to this world from. He watched her as a smile faded from her face when her life passed away, her last wish telling him that she wants to rest in a comfortable place, somewhere close to her home. Gojo would consume Shizu, and not in the super senior sense of Gojo, I mean in the literal slime sense, thus granting Gojo the body you all saw on the thumbnail. Satoru Gojofied Shizu, bringing us to the first end of the introductory arc of Tensura and starting the Orc Disaster. If you guys want to see another part continuing this little one-shot fun idea, I can definitely do that. This is pretty interesting, and it would be fun to see how Gojo's version of Tempest would go, especially his fights against Demon Lord Clayman, against the Orc Disaster, and how this guy would deal with the political issues in Tensura. If you guys want more isekai-related videos like Tensura, Overlord, or Mushoku Tensei, you're in for good news because I've got more isekai what-ifs coming, specifically what if Cosmo was in ReZero instead of Subaru, as well as a Subaru and Mushoku Tensei what-if. So those two are definitely in the pipeline, and I'm also excited for more parts of this at some point. If you guys like this video, those will definitely be coming. But hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you in the next one if you stick around. Thanks and goodbye.